Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is, wherever you are. Welcome to Friday's Grain Market Blast. Yes, you heard me correctly. We finally made it to Friday. It is the 9th of May all day, and myself and Angie, mainly Angie, will be providing a rapid roundup of the latest pricing flows and market moving news in agricultural markets. But before she does, I'll get the legals out the way. So, as usual, nothing discussed in this space session constitutes trading or investment advice or infers any kind of endorsement by PIQ or indeed myself, Ryan Paisley, or indeed the glamorous Angie Setzer. Angie, how are
I am super. I'm going to try to talk quiet today, though. I've heard that one of the two of us, and it's
you?
not me, but
Oh,
I'll let
stop
the
it.
audience guess who, may be a little in pain today. So
I'm,
we'll,
I'm, I'm, I'm not feeling as hungover as I did early this morning on the first podcast today.
I
But
can
yes,
tell you sound like you have a little bit more pep in your step. Maybe you
yeah,
got yourself a nice cup of coffee or
I
something like
was,
that.
I was definitely a bit jaded this morning. But yes,
I enjoy it. I mean, it's by
yeah,
accident.
yeah,
Well,
I know you enjoy
it's,
my pain and suffering. I'm very aware of that.
well, I'm just that way. I can't help it. I'm a little twisted. What are you going to do? So, happy Friday. I trade commodities for God's sakes. Like in The Big Short, you remember that part where he's like, "What do you do?" I trade
Yeah,
commodities. Good luck with that. Like, what? That was insulting to me. But yeah, I mean, not only commodities, like I could be a cool commodity trader, like an oil or energy person that I know. But no, I picked wheat.
yeah.
So, what are you going to do? I didn't even pick it, honestly. It picked me. But anyway, happy Friday. Here we are. What are we paying attention to? I don't know. It's the day before China trade talks. So happy China trade talk eve to those who celebrate, I guess. Just to kind of go over a bit of information that we didn't have yesterday when we were talking about the UK US trade pact. One of the things that we did get out of that, just to kind of get us started here, is that the agreement is still said to be fluid, which is great. The market loves fluid agreements. But, you know, we have months of negotiation ahead of us before the final iteration is reached. I used
Yeah.
that in commentary this morning, and I just wanted to say it too here.
Well, the
I
thing
even
is,
had to Google it to make sure I was using it right.
like we
Iter-
said yesterday, it's this weekend is basically a meeting about a meeting. Basically, yeah, they're
yeah,
going to
yeah,
provide.
yeah. At
They're
the
going to
end, everyone's gonna
provide.
be like, "This could have been an
Yeah,
email." Yeah,
yeah. The upside, yeah. The a positive outcome will be coming away, and on Monday having a frame. It's probably going
not
to be
hating
described. Right?
anyone.
Quote me
Yeah.
on this one. Quote
Well,
me
then
on this.
that's where we're at.
I reckon the language that's going to be used is a broad framework. I think that's going to be the key phrase, which basically means we don't really know what we're still doing. I don't know.
We just have a skeleton of a skeleton at this point, but we do see from the US UK one, you know, one of the things that did appear from a detailed situation that helps with agriculture is it looks like when it comes to like increasing the imports of certain goods, which is, you know, in the UK situation is more about a reduction of non-trade non-tariff barriers, so different regulations, fast tracking our stuff through customs, you know, some of these other things. But did read a report that, you know, that we're talking upwards of $700 million worth of ethanol imports, which would be cool. An additional 250 million worth of other agricultural goods would be imported as well, with beef being the one that they kind of mentioned. I was going to ask, like, how is the response to the beef? Because
Do you know?
ethanol, really, you're not huge, you know what I mean? But
Well, no,
like,
this is it. Do you know what? I've not seen much feedback so far. However, I myself did post that it might be this morning actually, but again, it was a bit of a blur. Um, that obviously farmers in the UK have been hit quite severely by the Labour government's inheritance tax changes,
yes, yeah,
and
yeah.
if you're a beef farmer, hearing that US beef is now back on the table, pun intended. Um, hey, I think it's another kick in the balls basically. Um,
Yeah.
but again, we must caveat this with it was said this morning that it's now going to take weeks to get this all like finalized.
Yes.
So again, let's not count our chickens before they've hatched. It could be a completely different agreement by the time it gets signed.
And we could end up with chickens being imported instead
There
of
you
beef.
go.
There you go. Hey, do you put brown sauce on your beef? I learned what brown sauce was the other day.
I'm not a fan.
Also,
I'm not a fan. I stick with the good old English mustard on my steak.
I don't. I'm not. We're not touching that. We're moving on. Anyway, China trade talks are the biggest thing that we're paying attention to. We've got all eyes on Switzerland this weekend as the delegation heads in. There's a wide assortment of expectations. We've got our friend Ryan here, who's like, nothing good's going to come And then we have
My bar is very low.
and then we have some other friends of ours that are like, oh, it's gonna kumbaya, like that SpongeBob with the rainbow. It's gonna be magic. Everything's gonna be great. And honestly, we're gonna land somewhere in the middle. In we did see Trump today. We had initially a Wall Street Journal report come out that said that the administration was thinking below 60%, 50 to 55% would be the new reduced tariff rate that they would offer to China basically after the weekend, maybe, or ahead of the weekend, to try to get them to kind of reduce their rates. They said that, according to the sources, which we all know to take with a giant grain of salt
Oh,
anymore,
massive. Yeah.
right? China has shown that they are willing to kind of adjust their tariffs accordingly. And then you had President Trump come out on the Truth Social website and say 80% sounds like a good number. But it's up to Scotty B. I think he should start calling him that. I really do. I think it's just, it's up to our friend, Mr. Scott Besant. When I listen in the morning, I'm like, I say it wrong. I put the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable. But anyway, this is where we are. This is what we're looking for. And there's a lot of talk of the administration also pressuring China to return to the rare earth metal exporting world. And so we have a few things that we're asking. One of the things that was really interesting to me overnight was that we did see China's export data come out. And so there's a few folks that are like, hey, China's actually not hurting. Look at this. And they pointed to the fact that, exports in the month of April were up by 8%, I believe, month over month. Folks had expected it to come in closer to like 2% because of the tariffs and the concerns on that side of things. It appears that, really we're seeing a huge increase in loadings for Asia, the European Union, or Europe in general. And so it'll be interesting to see because the U.S. loadings have dropped over 21% from the month prior. And so one of the things that we had heard when all of this was put together was that the leaders of these countries, especially in the surrounding regions or surrounding area in Asia, and then across the European Union, have been, warning, like, you can't dump your goods on us to help offset your issues with the US. But apparently, can't hear you. In addition, though, you do have several large US retailers that are starting to book freight space, starting to book shipping mid-May forward, because basically at this point, the question is, do you take the hit and figure out how to handle tariffs and pray to the gods of retail that by the time this stuff hits the shelves, that we don't have or hits the shores, we don't have these tariffs and things like that, or do you deal with empty shelves? And so we are hearing, a lot more talk of, if we don't fix the freight situation, if we don't get, sort of these shipments back in line, you're going to have empty store shelves here pretty soon. And we did see that. Did I mention the shipments dropped 21% in April? I can't remember if I said the actual number to the US, but they did. Anyway,
It,
geopolitics.
on that point
Yes.
about
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
freight, I think it kind of makes sense because maybe like one factor to kind of take into consideration is, yes, obviously that initial hurt. It's like, okay, well, we just won't import any goods, but then you're like, well, hang on, if no one else is importing goods, then there's going to be a premium on the goods that are imported.
Right.
Therefore, we might as well buy some.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's really one of those things too, where like I said, what is worse, not having anything to sell
Yeah,
or
no,
figuring
exactly.
out how to deal with the tariffs? And so that's where we're at with that regard. We'll see what kind of comes of it. We'll see what happens over the weekend and all of that good stuff, because it's obviously super important. Geopolitically, moving on to geopolitics, we did see President Trump kind of express his frustration again yesterday. He announced that the administration late in the day is calling for a 30-day unconditional ceasefire in Ukraine, basically saying that this is going to open up the window for direct communication and negotiation and get us working towards peace. And then he warned that a failure to follow the ceasefire once it was agreed to would result in major sanctions. Now, on whom? Are we going to sanction Ukraine? Which Ukraine said that they're only going to mirror Russia. But it is interesting to note that Russia has called for a 3-day ceasefire to celebrate the end of World War II. They announced that it was basically starting at midnight yesterday morning,
Yeah,
the
and
8th.
just on that, we
Yeah.
just it might even been whilst we've been talking. I have seen a headline flash on PIQ, because it's not me posting it, obviously. That there's been Ukraine have reported 80 conflicts along the board, like along the
Yes.
front line already today. So
Russia
fire,
launched
what fire?
They launched 220 drones on the Zaporizhzhia region oblast alone. That one with the Z and the P's. And so they basically overnight they were like, what ceasefire? But what's really fun right now that I'm really enjoying with this is like Russia says they'll call for a ceasefire, and then there's no ceasefire. Like Ukraine will launch some sort of attack or something like that. And they'll be like, they're not honoring the ceasefire. And then they'll say, like, right now they're denying what the Oblast governor is saying about the attacks that they had experienced. Russia's like, that wasn't us. Don't know what you're talking about. We ceasefired
Yeah, right.
overnight.
There wasn't, yeah, it was someone else. Yeah,
And I'm
it
like,
was Dave next door.
so basically, they're great at gaslighting, and you gotta love it. So you have a little bit of back and forth on what that means and how that's all going to go down. But it is interesting. Vance kind of took a little bit of a harder stance this week on Putin and Russia and all of that. And so if I were Putin, I'd just be really, really nervous if Trump says, "All right, well, we're sending JD your way." Just make sure I wouldn't answer the phone if I were him. But little tongue-in-cheek joke there about Mr. Vance. Situation between India and Pakistan has not improved. India says they shot down several missiles and drones sent by Pakistan. Pakistan claims that India's attacks have taken the lives of dozens of their citizens. We got world leaders calling on the two countries to remain calm and to de-escalate the situation. We had a fun little event yesterday, right? One country's weapons that they had sold to one country took down another country's weapons that they had sold to another country, and everyone's like, whoa. Apparently like a fighter jet or something. I don't know. I'm
Yeah,
sure.
no, yeah, it was a French Rafale jet. It's the first combat kind of hit on one of these jets. And the thing is, well, like we've seen with Russia and Ukraine, right? Like the industrial defense complex or a military complex, whatever we're calling it, it's basically just a like testing bed for them. That's what it feels like.
Yes.
Again, but
That's what it
kind of
is.
noticed, what we noted yesterday as well in yesterday's show, it's the web of geopolitics at the moment is so messy. It's like we've got Putin and Xi shaking hands. Meanwhile, Putin is sending arms to Pakistan and Xi's sending arms to India.
Yeah.
They're at war with each other. It's like whose friend is who at the
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah. I mean, and that's what it is. You flip the flop them a little bit there, but you've got Xi and Russia saying that they have a no limits partnership. But then they're also, basically supporting the opposite who are currently fighting. And then you've got a whole slew of things that are super fun to pay attention to. On the grain front, we got export sales out yesterday morning. We kind of touched on them a little bit. Corn export sales were phenomenal again, well above expectations. We currently are over 500 million bushels ahead of last year's pace, a half a billion bushels ahead of last year's export selling pace in corn. The USDA is expecting us to be at the end of the year ahead by 258 million. So we basically kind of have doubled so far what they're expecting. And honestly, at the pace we're going, we'll be sold out or we will have met the full season export expectations, basically by the first part of June. And we have a whole quarter of a marketing year left. There has been some pressure. We've seen, obviously, the July Corn Board tested its old contract lows or close to its old contract lows, lows seen early December there yesterday, but kind of ran into some buying. Part of the pressure that we've seen has been, kind of a speculator unwind of length in the spread, but then there's been a lot of talk. The commercials are playing a fun little game on the physical side of things. And honestly, with the consolidation in the industry and some of the things that we've seen, it's pretty easy for them to kind of maneuver through this thing and maybe create some false signals to the market. But we have seen it under pressure. We've seen a big uptick in Argentina farmer selling. Brazilian farmer selling has been pretty strong. It slowed down this week as the currency, has shifted. And it will be interesting to see, if some of the more aggressive selling pace out of Brazil was more betting on the come because of a larger safrinha crop expectation than what we were thinking. New crop wheat exports, phenomenal. Old crop, poor, but we're down to 2 weeks left of old crop in wheat. Soybean sales were still good. We're actually above the pace needed there too to meet USDA export expectations. And a really interesting note here in the Eastern Corn Belt, we're seeing basis just kind of firm in a big way. Bean basis is firmed, 25 to 40 cents depending on where you're at in the Eastern Corn Belt, and corn basis is firming with some pretty substantial pushes. And so there's been a lot of talk about the pipeline being full. And I think that's the case a little bit more in the Western Corn Belt. They had a bigger crop last year than they'd seen the last couple of years. Whereas in the Eastern Corn Belt, we had some reductions. And so it'll be interesting to see how cash leads this thing, what happens with trade negotiations and what happens with grain flow. And so, yeah, happy weekend. We'll see. We just opened again. Corn's up a nick or 4 cents in the July board. December's up 3. Beans tried to trade higher. They're kind of falling back a bit. They're up a couple. November board's flat. And wheat just wheat sucks. I know. That's it. Blink 182 wrote about that. I don't know if you remember that. Wheat sucks. I know. That one.
Oh
That one.
God.
Yeah.
Oh, you can tell it's Friday.
I'm done. My brain is soup, and I'm not grumpy,
Yeah,
but I just would. Yeah, I'm ready for the
I'm with
weekend.
you. I'm